I got a question recently from a listener, and I wanted to make an episode about this. The question is about reaching your target people, but outside of the normal space you operate in, whether that be your particular sector's media or different content creators in different areas. How do you bridge your story from your typical area to somewhere else? I called this episode Why You're Missing Lots of PR Opportunities, because I think when you don't bridge stories, when you don't try and reach outside of your area, you really are missing a lot. Because the point is, your market, the people that you're trying to reach, don't just do one thing. Gamers don't just play games. Accountants don't just do accountancy. Investors don't just invest. So all these people do other things. Gamers might be involved in politics. Accountants, I've mentioned this example before, might like sailing. Investors might like just buying children's toys for their kids. Now, a lot of PR people don't even try and do this. They get kind of stuck in this mindset of just knowing their sector, their area, and don't go beyond it. While other people do and make a terrible hash up of the pitches that they make. So what I'm going to share in today's episode is how I personally approach bridging, how I think you can make this work, and how you can reach a much bigger potential audience than the one you currently are, particularly if you've got to that point where perhaps you're struggling within your particular sector to make traction and you need to gain some credibility outside of it and then come back to it, or if you just simply want to expand the market. Before I start, just two quick housekeeping points. If you've messaged me recently and you haven't got a reply yet, my apologies. I am moving cities at the moment. I'm moving to Sydney. If you're there, by the way, I would love to meet up with you when I get there, because I know there are loads of PR firms there and people involved in PR. Also, the other one is, if you signed up to the newsletter and you haven't got any yet, the reason probably is I've got 15 people currently sitting on the mailing list waiting to have the confirmation email clicked. And a lot of people haven't clicked that. If you haven't got that yet, then try and sign up to the newsletter again at thepublicrelationspodcast.com, thepublicrelationspodcast.com. Click on the link, fill in your details, and this time it should send that link to you. If you don't, email me, info@thepublicrelationspodcast.com, and we'll get it sorted out from there. Right, so what do people do wrong when it comes to bridging? And I'm talking about anyone, from individuals to SMEs to large PR agencies. I think the problem is that people just try to pitch an idea to this other sector, to this other area, which just doesn't resonate with them. If you do it badly, if you say the wrong things, it can be an immediate turn-off. It certainly can annoy people. I know, having been on the receiving end of this plenty of time. And there's for every chance you're just going to get marked as spam. You're going to get blocked. The problem is that a lot of people, I think, just miss the chance to connect with that outlet on the level that the outlet or the content creator actually operates at. So, for example, people often reach out to media outlets and they say things like, I want to offer an interview for a music show that doesn't do interviews. Or I had someone actually who offered their newly signed artist to appear on the news show I presented, which had an entertainment minute every hour read by the showbiz person with no clips in it. And don't laugh, because PR agencies, supposedly good ones, did this all the time when I was an editor, and still do it from what I hear from journalist friends. So people not only get the pitch wrong, but they get everything wrong. And the problem here is that it doesn't work because it's simply not what the outlet wants. And outlets generally understand what their audience want and what buttons their audience want pushing. And if what you're offering doesn't do that, from the description that you've given in your pitch, they're simply not going to use it. So how do you use it? How do you bridge? This is what I do. And if you're struggling with doing this, or if you haven't tried it yet, this is something to add to your PR toolbox. And you can apply this to anything, whether you're in healthcare, finance, or even a local shop. There's no need, by the way, to write any of this down. The show notes are going to be in the next newsletter, which I just gave the website URL for, so I won't repeat it again. Okay, step one. It's not just about reaching any other area, right? Instead of just trying to spread your net widely to absolutely everything, think about who you want to reach. Let's start here. What else do they do? So like our accountants going sailing, what else are they interested in? Maybe CEOs might go horse riding, or maybe they fly small planes. So the people you want to reach, what else do they do in their lives? That's step one. Think about that. Step two, find the outlets that reach those people. Normally this isn't difficult. A Google search will throw up a bunch of examples. Then think about what story these outlets do. What angles do they cover? How do they approach things? It's no different from the kind of research you would do normally within your sector, but you're going to have to go into a little bit more depth here just to try and get a feeling of what these outlets focus on, or these content creators. What sort of stories do they want to do? Now, really open up your mind here, and this is the key thing here. So many people get into this narrow focus of, this is a story I want to deliver, so I need an outlet that matches that story. No. You got to think about it the other way. Start approaching it from the outlet or the content creator's point of view first. What are they looking for? Now think about what part of your story that you're trying to put across connects with that. Now let's say there are, say, 10 things in your story. Maybe only one of those things connects with what this outlet or content creator does, but that could well be enough. You are looking for the parts of the story, not the whole story, which you might often do when you're talking about your sector. You're looking for the parts of the story that connect with what that outlet wants. The next thing, once you've found this, the next key rule to bridging is don't pitch what you want to pitch. Don't pitch your story. I mean, you should never do this anyway, even in your own sector. You should always think about the outlet itself first. But you need to pitch what this organization wants to hear. And leave out your main points unless it directly relates to it. So if we're talking about accountancy and sailing, we want to go in with an angle about sailing, not about accountancy, not about how to do your tax returns, whatever it is. The angle, that top line, has got to talk about sailing. It's got to be relevant to what that outlet wants. One thing I've done before, and I've actually included this in the pitch, is to say in my email that I hadn't spotted this connection before, but when I thought about it, between this outlet and me, I thought, this is really relevant. And by making that point, you're addressing the elephant in the room, which maybe they're feeling, oh, this has got nothing to do with me. And you're saying, actually, I think there is a connection. And you're helping to highlight what that connection is. That's a little tip for you there. The final point, if they say yes, don't go into an interview and try and hijack it with what you want to say. So don't go in there after doing this beautiful pitch and saying that my accountancy story is all about sailing, and go in there and just start talking accountancy, because it's going to be a huge black mark. They're going to hate you for it. You're never going to get on again, and it's just going to look really stupid. So if they say yes, prepare for it like any media interview, or if you're providing a brief or an article to them, or however it is that you're helping them out. And your goal then is to reframe everything you're writing in that point. And it doesn't take that long. I mean, if you think about a press release, it doesn't take that long. But you're reframing everything so that the points you make are the things that they want to hear. And you use the points that you want to make to get across as evidence. So, for example, if we're talking about sailing, we might be talking about the costs of running a boat and about how you can use tax breaks to reduce that cost. So you're bringing it from where they're starting and you're bringing it down to the point you want to make. Maybe you're selling some kind of service that is going to reduce your tax rates. So your goal is to reframe everything into the context that they are giving. This is about telling people how they're going to solve their problem with your solution. And you've got to do this. You've got to draw these connections together, because there's a reason why these people aren't normally covering your topic. And that's because they haven't seen the connection between the two of them yet. And it's your job, just like with any normal PR, to show them that connection and to emphasize how it does relate to what they're doing. The technique, as I say, is called bridging, because you are literally building bridges between two completely different sides. And there's often just that bit, that bridge, which connects the two. I thought it'd be useful to give a couple of examples of this. And I thought I'd give a couple of really simple ones, which I've done, and then also one which I think has, frankly, changed society. The simple one, let me start with this one. A couple of years ago, I was heavily focused in my personal life on the podcasting world. And I wanted to reach people in that space, but realized that the podcasting community itself was not somewhere where I was going to be able to get any traction. There's a lot of experienced people in the podcasting space. So I wanted to reach people who might be interested in what I was doing in another area. And one of the areas I'd identified was that a lot of teachers were getting into podcasting and teaching it to their students. And I spotted a maths teacher's show that was looking for guests. So I did my research, I looked at what they did, and I found nothing at all that I could see that it would connect. It wasn't to do with podcasting, it wasn't an IT class for kids in schools, but maths. So in this particular case, I push bridging to the extreme, and I use myself to create the connection between two topics that felt like they were completely different. So I pitched it as me as a former journalist who would love to discuss rapport building techniques that were used in journalism and how those could be applied by teachers in the classroom. And that I could use some of what I'd learned in the podcasting project with this as well. Now, it was close. There was a couple of emails, but she agreed. I did the interview. I talked about rapport. I really made it relevant to maths teachers and how they could use it. And I brought in podcasting as a bit of a side topic, but I got it in there. So I made that connection. Another example, this particular podcast itself, right? Now, you've heard me talk about the Public Relations Podcast project already. Now, one of the things I have to do with that is actually code this. I've got to build it myself. And if you didn't know, I have been a hobby coder for many years. And I posted this on LinkedIn recently. And a software as a service podcast, which is termed as SaaS normally, if you don't know the term, a podcast reached out and asked if I'd like to go on and talk about the code that I'd been writing. Now, in this particular case, there could be an opportunity here. I'm not going to be able to talk about PR, but by talking about the code, by making it relevant to that particular audience, and then bringing in what I'm building and why I'm building it, why it's going to relate to the Public Relations Podcast, this particular project, it would allow me to talk about the PR side of it. And you never know, there could be some marketing people listening to that SaaS show, or there could even be coders that have friends in the marketing department who say, oh, you should try this out. Now, frankly, I think this is another good lesson here. And that is that the further you get away from what you're talking about, the harder it becomes to bridge and the more preparation you're going to have to do. So in fact, I didn't go ahead with doing that interview because it was going to take me a lot of time to really gear up what I could say to make sure that I was going to deliver real, genuine value to that podcast. So I just don't have the time right now to be able to do that. And I don't like doing interviews unless I'm actually going to deliver some genuine value. I want people to remember me so that I can get invited back. And the final example, and I think, frankly, this has changed society. And as always, this show is not about morals, it's about techniques. But you look at the environmental movement, and I remember when I was in my early days of journalism. And if you think about it purely, as I say, again, I'm putting aside the morals here, whatever your political feelings are, forget them. It's nothing to do with that in this show. In the early days of the environmental movement, it had particularly in Britain, had a very stereotypical image. It had people that were dressed in duffel coats, as they were called at the time. Do you remember those? Gosh, years ago. Often woolly hats and lots of bright colors and stuff. And that was the kind of image of someone that associated themselves with the environmental movement at the time. And as a result, they were seen as this kind of other group, separate, totally separate. And then along comes this chap in the UK called Jonathan Porritt. And he was amazing because he understood that if you wanted to connect and sell this message to business people, to ordinary members of the public who saw this environmental movement as kind of crazies off at the side, you needed to bridge and connect with them. So instead of turning up in a duffel coat, he put on a suit. He put on the tie. Does anyone wear ties anymore? But he put on the tie. And he started coming across. He rebranded himself and he rebranded the movement as this respectable, research, credible people that knew what they were talking about and weren't just getting angry and shouting about things, but were actually connecting with people and persuading them. Now, I mean, you could do hundreds of episodes on what he did in terms of bridging that connection. But you can see for yourself the impact that that kind of movement has had since it moved from its early days of being a sort of very niche, obscure thing into something now which dominates news agendas and dominates press and dominates a lot of company PR in the things that they're putting out now. And it's because the environmental movement started to connect, started to bridge with the people that they needed to influence. Porritt, I remember, was coming up with stuff about the economic reasons. He was coming up with really good arguments for businesses that saw no value in the environmental debate. And he was coming up with environmental reasons for how it would make them money. And the moment he spoke to them on their level and not on a you must do this level, then they started to pay attention. There's obviously so much more you could say about that, but the point is it's about bridging what you want to say to what other people are connecting with and what they talk about. I would love to know what the most extreme bridging you have ever done is. Let me know about that. I would love to get the example on the show if I can, or if not, just feel free to share it with me. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Richard Midson, Midson. I would love to hear about what you've done. I'll sum up the main points again in a moment. As I say, you get them all on the newsletter next week if you go to the publicrelationspodcast.com and sign up to the newsletter. A couple of other things to talk about. Last week's episode, that was a corker from Eric Olson, talking about crisis PR. If you haven't heard that one yet, settle down. It's a really good one. And as I said in that episode, Eric is very happy to come back. So if you have any questions for him, let me know about that too. There was an interesting one from Cannes Lions, which is like the major advertising and branding event which takes place in the south of France. This was about AB InBev, and the company is the world's largest, well, I think the biggest brewer in the world. But they did some things which, while I don't talk about industry news here, that's not what this podcast is about, I thought it was quite interesting, the reason why they got it. And it was because of the way they'd approached the way that they connect with people. And two examples that I remember them doing, which really stood out, was during COVID, instead of paying for a Super Bowl ad, they donated the money to help advertise vaccine awareness. Now, you could say in terms of eyeballs, they would have got a lot more people seeing them in the Super Bowl ad. But how many people honestly remember Super Bowl ads after they've run? Whereas this kind of thing is going to get talked about, it's going to get a lot of free media coverage and the fact you did this, and it's going to leave a far better feeling of goodwill. So it was a great example. I'm not surprised that they've got that again. And finally, just to mention the Public Relations Podcast project. Work, as I mentioned earlier, is very much underway on this. It's really exciting, actually. The logic is that if you're sat in the office on any day, and I know you are because I've been there, if you're sat in the office on any day and you go, how the heck do I deal with this? How do I get through this moment? How do I solve this problem? The whole idea of the project is it's going to be a resource in your pocket, on your phone or on your computer that you can access, ask questions, and get some clear, straightforward, step-by-step advice right now. There's a few other features I'm going to mention as well. If you are interested in that, then head to the publicrelationspodcast.com website. There's a button at the top which says the word project, highly highlighted, and you can click to join the waiting list on that. And I will be sending some more details about latest developments on that very soon. Right, I need to move cities. Quite literally, I've got 25 boxes in the other room, 35 boxes in the other room, and some suitcases literally lined up. I've just got my desk I'm recording this on today left in here. I need to pack this up as well, head to another city, and then hopefully normal service will be resumed by next week. Whatever you're up to, hope you're having a good week. I'll speak to you real soon. Bye.